All right, pilots. Nick's coming back to you with another informative video. So we're going to do a general video today about on speed. And this is the effect of putting your plane into a landing configuration and getting all set up to ride a glide slope down into the runway safely and to flare and float and lay it down softly at the end on the runway. Now, this is a generalization because learning how to set up your aircraft on speed will allow you to land just about every fixed wing aircraft you're ever going to fly. There's going to be little differences here and there. The speed at which you come in on speed will be different by the thickness of the air, the weather, the hot and cold of the air, the wind patterns. That's going to change your actual speed coming in. And that is a misnomer or something that people get confused when they hear the words on speed. Being on speed has nothing to do with your airspeed. Being on speed is having the correct angle of attack set up on your plane with your gear down and your flaps down, and the correct velocity vector onto your runway from the proper altitude. That is being on speed. So whatever airspeed you're maintaining when you're on speed is the correct airspeed, because that's all going to be determined by the conditions that you're flying in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to teach you how to be on speed right up here. We're just going to be flying up here. I'm going to set up this aircraft on speed, and we're not even going to worry about a runway. I'm not going to put it on the runway. I'm just going to show you that we can get set up on speed and then fly flat and level if we want to, or we can fly down on a glide slope. Basically, when you get your gear down and your flaps are out, you're going to get a bracket on your HUD on this airplane. Other airplanes might not have a bracket, but they all have an AOA indexer, or at least most of them do, and that's these three symbols right here. You can see the little check mark below, the circle, and then the check mark above. So that is your AOA indexer, and this is what you're looking at when you're setting up on speed to land. Also, some aircraft, especially modern ones, will have symbology in the HUD to further help you set up on speed and maintain it properly. So let's go through the indexer really quick. It's really simple. When you are on speed, completely on speed, you have the correct AOA and you're on slope to come in, this circle will be lit up with nothing else. It'll just be the circle. And that basically means that your nose is up at the proper angle and you have the correct lift to come down. Mainly it's going to be your angle. Now, these ones is going to determine your speed to maintain that, your actual airspeed. So if you're fast, you'll have the check marks below the circle, which means your airspeed is too high, which means your on speed, your AOA indexer is saying that your landing is too small, so you're going too fast. So you need to slow down. So when you first start out, you're probably just going to have this check mark lit up on the bottom because you're probably going to be going a little bit faster than you want to for landing when you're first getting your gear out and your flaps down and all that, because you're still setting up on speed. So that means you're going too fast. This means you're going slow. So if you're set up on speed and you just have the donut, and people just call it the donut, and all of a sudden this lights up, that means you're probably going too slow. Well, I shouldn't say probably. You are going too slow, so you need to increase your airspeed. And you'll also be able to tell by your velocity vector. So on your HUD, this circle right here, this is your velocity vector. This is not where you are. This is where your aircraft is going. So when you set up on speed, the other thing that you might see is a bracket. If you don't see a bracket, because you have an aircraft like an A-10 or something that doesn't have an AOA bracket in the HUD, you'll still have your velocity vector. So when you are on speed, your velocity vector is where your plane is going to. Right now you can tell we're flying basically level. So we're not descending, losing altitude, or ascending, gaining altitude. We're flying pretty straight. And that's what the velocity vector is showing us. So if we're on speed, your velocity vector is probably going to be down here because you're descending. Your nose is up, your tail is down, your gear's out, and your flaps are down, and you've got a correct AOA angle so that you land down on glide slope. So if you were If you were going as slow as you're going to land, but you were flat and level, you're going to be falling out of the sky, right? So you're lifting your nose up and pushing into the air, which is causing lift as you're going forward, because you're going forward slower than normal, but at that angle, it's pushing you back up. So you're descending at a slow rate. So that's the glide slope, and that's what being on speed is setting up. It's setting you up to be angled into that cushion of air as you're gliding down onto the runway. If you land your plane going really fast, not using AOA to glide down slower, then you're going to land too hard, and also your tires are going to be spinning so fast because of the speed you're maintaining, you're going to blow your tires and wreck your airplane. So that's another reason why you're using AOA and on speed to land your aircraft. You don't want to explode your landing gear. It's also something about taking off, which I'll get into with takeoffs on other aircraft, about overspeeding your gear. So what we're going to do here is, I am just going to unpause this, and I'm going to set up on speed, and I'm going to explain to it while I'm doing it. And then we're also going to show what it looks like in a few other aircraft to see that on speed is the same in every aircraft for the most part. The fundamentals of being on speed is the same in every aircraft. And then we're going to land a few of these while we're on speed to show you how kind of easy it really is. And once you get used to this and you can practice it without even landing, it is going to make everything click for you a lot easier. The whole art of landing is going to fundamentally be a lot easier for you. Knowing it won't be like, I got to know exactly what speed I'm going with every aircraft, sort of, but not really. You don't have to know all these technical numbers. And I'm not going to get into technical numbers. There's a lot of technical numbers for your percentages of pitch and all that stuff. Don't even worry about that. We're just going to use our symbology and our know-how to set up on speed, and you can get into the nitty-gritty of the numbers later if you really want to hone it. So here we go. We're going to unpause. You can see we're flying around at 356 knots. We are in a FA-18 Hornet. So what we're going to do is we're just going to throw her in idle now. And we're going to try to maintain level flight here while we're doing it. And we're just going to let our airspeed start to drop. We'll put out our air brake and we'll slow down a little bit quicker. And we're looking to get to about 250, 240 knots. You can see our velocity vector is already starting to pull up, so I'm also going to pull back on the stick just a little bit to try to maintain level flight while we're losing our airspeed. So you see, we're still flying level, but you notice now see how we're kind of at an angle, but we're still level. So we're already gaining a little bit of AOA here as we're losing speed. So let's bring the air brake back in now. So we're down to 200 knots. We're going pretty slow. So let's get the gear out. And let's put our flaps down to full, just like we were setting up for landing. So we're going to have to push through the Hornet bounce here as we're getting our flaps out. We're going to have a little bit of bounce. The nose is going to try to kind of push up. We're going to wait for that to go away. Now you can see we have that bracket. They call it the E bracket. So this is your AOA bracket. And when you get your flight vector into this bracket, you're close or onto your angle of attack that you need for landing. And you can see when we're outside of it, we don't have a donut, and it also says we're going too fast for proper AOA. But we can pull back on the stick just a little bit and get our flight vector into our E bracket. You notice that donut appeared now. So we are now in the margin of error for having proper angle of attack to land our aircraft. So I'm still going fast, and I'm doing that on purpose. I'm also pulling back on the stick to get the velocity vector in there. I'm going to let go now, and I'm going to start using my trim to trim the nose up. So I'm no longer pulling back on the stick. I just hit my trimmer back a few times to get my nose up. I'm going to click it again. We're still pretty good now. Click it one more time. Altitude. I want to get it perfect. All right, look at that. We are right in our E bracket. We are right in our AOA. And if you look over here, you notice we are also set for AOA. We're not going too slow, and we're not going too fast. So at our current altitude, we are on like a glide slope of somewhere around 3 degrees, and we're doing 153 knots, and we are considered on speed. I also have my hands off the throttle and off the stick now. Once you're set up on speed, you're no longer going to push forward or pull back on the stick unless you have to, because you're either too low or too high on your glide slope, in which case you might have to use the stick a little bit, but for the most part, you're going to use your throttle for everything now. So right now from where we are, you could pretend like, say, the runway is right in front of us, and we've got our velocity vector over the runway. but it's a little above the runway and we want to get it down. So what we do is we just decrease our throttle a little bit. And this is how you control your glide slope when you're coming in on speed. You do not push or pull the stick, you're using your throttle. So you see our velocity vector has come down now. So now if the runway was down here and we were up here, now it's down here. So when you're coming in for a landing, you're just going to be using your throttle once you're all set up on speed and you're lined up with the runway. You're going to use your throttle to control your glide slope and control your flight vector onto the runway. If you're really high when you start, that's going to make your glide slope be really steep. So you might want to maybe lose some more altitude first and then throttle back up to bring your velocity vector back up and get it back onto the runway. And you'll just be able to tell from doing it so many times that, if you're too high, I mean, just think about it. If you're really high above the runway and you get set up on speed and then you get your velocity vector onto that runway, you're probably going to be coming in at a very steep angle on your glide slope and going really probably a little slower than you should be to try to get that velocity vector back onto that runway. Like, I can kill the speed right now. And we're going to drop that velocity vector down, 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 down. So if the runway was down here, we're way too high. And if I just lower my speed to try to get the vector on there quicker like that, we're gonna dump the nose a little bit. And when we come in, we're going to be coming in at such a steep angle, we're going to flop onto the runway. So you want to control your glide slope with your throttle, and you don't want to come in too steep. So if we add more throttle, by the way, see how I can bring our flight vector almost up to level flight again? And let's go ahead and do that. Let's just increase the throttle. I'm still not using the stick at all. I haven't touched the trim since I got set up on speed directly in the E-bracket. I'm just increasing the throttle. So now look at that, we're gaining altitude. So we're set up for on speed, but we're gaining altitude. So that's how the throttle is going to control everything. If you need to turn an aircraft while you're on speed, because in cases like aircraft carrier recovery, when you're set up on speed, you're going to set up on speed on the down leg after you brake across the deck. So you're going to have to learn how to turn. When you're turning on speed, you're just going to roll the aircraft using your stick. Now, I'm not pulling back on it and I'm not pushing forward on it. I'm just rolling the aircraft to a certain degree. And then I'm going to increase my throttle to keep that flight vector up there so I'm not losing a bunch of altitude. And I could also pull back on the stick just a little bit to help supplement. Because when you're turning over to the runway, you don't want to be losing all your altitude, right? And we're a little we're no longer on speed because we are gaining a little bit more speed from using the throttle. But that's okay. Once we come around and we're locked onto the runway, we can go ahead and, get right back onto speed. And this is how you set up on speed with pretty much every aircraft. You don't have to use trim to do this, but it is recommended because the trim is going to hold you at the correct angle properly, whereas your hand is not. Subconscious oscillations with your hands and arms and so on and so forth, you're going to be moving that stick around a lot more than what you think. So it's best to trim on speed and then just use the stick for roll and the throttle for your altitude, your glide slope, and your velocity vector. So we're going to do a little bit of computer magic here, and we're going to set up for a runway now, and I'll see you guys in just a moment. Alright pilots, here we are. We can see the Maycop runway is right back here off of my left shoulder. Now we're going to make a nice leg base turn into a final approach for this runway. I'm not on speed yet. We're doing 290 knots. We're going to slow down. We're going to set up on speed. We're going to trim it so we're nice and solid, and then we're going to use our throttle to maintain our velocity vector onto our running point, and we're going to pay attention to how steep we are. If we have to make adjustments coming in, we'll do so to come down a little bit lower so we're coming in a little bit flatter. And we're going to land this airplane. And then we're going to show you on speed, and we're going to land a couple other aircraft while we're on speed. Piece of cake. Let's get started. So here we are, 290. I'm completely idle. We're letting the aircraft just kind of coast. There's the runway right over here. We're going to go ahead and start making our slow turn into the runway. Usually in a Hornet, I don't pop the gear and the flaps until I'm about at least 250. So there we go. We're at about 250. We're going to pop the gear. We're going to set the flaps down to full. And that's how you always land the Hornet, just so you know. It's gear down, flaps to full. You always land flaps full on the Hornet, no matter what your loadout is, flaps to full. All right, so now we got our E bracket. We're bringing our speed down. We're starting to feel that drag on the controls. That's fine. We'll get through the bump. You'll notice when you bring your flaps out and you start slowing down, there'll be this huge bump all of a sudden where the Hornet's nose just wants to shoot up on you. That's fine. Just go through it. If it makes you feel better to push down on the stick a little bit, that's fine. Now we're through the bump. I'm going to start hitting my trim button back. Not too much at first, just a little bit. And we're going to start getting that velocity vector into the E bracket to make sure we have the correct AOA to be on speed. And I'm also lining up to the runway at the same time, a little multitasking. So now you can see, look at that velocity vector. We're going to run into the ground if we fly like this, right? So we're just going to increase the gas a little bit. A little bit of throttle. Now you're going to notice when you're doing stuff like this, you are moving the throttle back and forth. You don't just push the throttle in a one spot and it just does everything for you. When you're flying an aircraft in DCS and in real life, you are moving the throttle a lot more than what most people think. When you're doing air-to-air refueling, when you're flying in formation, when you're landing, you are rocking this throttle quite a bit to maintain. So there you go, we got our flight velocity on the front of the runway. So we don't have to worry about it any more than that. We're just going to lower the speed, increase the speed back and forth, just try to maintain that. Oh, we're a little off the runway now, so we're going to increase the speed just a little bit more and rock it a little bit higher. We're giving a little bit of roll to make sure we stay straight. But we're not pulling back on the stick and we're not pushing forward on the stick. We're doing all the velocity vector with just the throttle. And you can also, it didn't take that long to trim the nose up properly. Once the nose is trimmed to where you're on speed, you're done messing with all that nose. It's done, you're set. It's all up to that throttle now. And you can see I'm not coming in real steep. I allowed the aircraft to come down below the runway for a little bit to get that glide slope down, and then I increased my speed back onto the runway. That way I have a nice flat approach. You don't want to come in too steep, because you can come in extremely steep when you're on speed because you were high. On speed doesn't mean you have a perfect glide slope. On speed just means you're ready to ride the glide slope and land. So here I'm not even going to flare. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fly this thing into the runway, and I'm just going to put it into idle before we get there and show you that even if you don't flare, if you have a good glide slope, it's going to be a nice smooth landing. There you go. Piece of cake, right? That was super simple. I never even touched the stick for most of that. I was just using the throttle once I set up on speed. It's really that easy to do this. So what we're going to do now is a little bit more PC magic here. We're going to switch into another plane, and we're going to just set it up on speed and land it just like we landed this one. It's going to be a little bit different because it's a different plane, so it has different characteristics, but setting up on speed and getting to the runway is still the same fundamentals. So I will see you guys in a moment. Alright, so here we are. We are at the same spot. We're right up here. Maycop is right down there. Same runway. This time, though, we are in an F-16 Viper, Block 50. Have a look-see here. Beautiful jet. Way different than the Hornet, but somewhat similar in certain circumstances. But it's much smaller. It's much faster. It's much more agile. It does land a little bit different because it's more like a missile, but to get to the runway, we're still going to set up on speed and use the same fundamentals to get there. The only difference is when you land the Viper, you're going to try to land it a little bit lighter because it doesn't have that big, robust, thick Hornet Navy gear that's made to land on aircraft carriers by slamming it on the deck. So you have to be a little bit more gentle. The wheelbase is a lot closer together, so it's a little bit more squirrely on the ground. And it doesn't have very good brakes, so you want to land your Viper in a good nose-up attitude when you land and not bring the nose down when you land. You want to keep the nose up to aero brake for as long as you can before the nose comes down naturally, and then you'll want to slow down. But we're not worried about how to land the Viper. We're worried about on speed. So you notice we have the AOA indexer on the Viper just the same. We already know what these means. We're going too fast. We're going too slow. We are on speed angle. So we're going to We're going to pop the pause here. I'm going to make a left turn into the runway on final. We're going to set up on speed. You know the drill. Let's do it. So the Viper is definitely a lot faster, and so it's not going to slow down near as good as the Hornet. It's going to be hard to slow down, but the Viper is going to bring its air brake out, and it lands with the air brake out. When you're landing a Viper, your air brake's out. No matter what the loadout, just like how I said that you always have your flaps all the way down in the Hornet, well, in the Viper, you always have your air brake out when you're landing. It's a lot easier to give the Viper a little bit of throttle to bring your speed up a little bit than it does to try to slow it down. Also, the flaps on the Viper are automatic, so we don't have to worry about setting our flaps to anything. As soon as we start getting slower, the flaps automatically start coming down all by themselves. When we pop the gear, they're going to come down. So we're already going 250 knots. The landing gear on the Viper is rated for 300, so you can bring the gear out at 300. You do not land at 300. So we're just making a nice gradual turn. You can see I've been idle this whole time, and even with the air brake out and the gear coming down, we're just now hitting 200 knots. This baby wants to go, and it wants to go fast. So we're making our turn. We're getting ready to line up with the runway here. You can see we have our E bracket on the HUD now because the gear is completely out. And I'm trying to kind of work my altitude down a little bit more right now before we even get to being on speed, because I noticed we were a little high. And I start these runs off for this video high on purpose so that we can see ourselves working down to a lower altitude before we get completely on speed. It's real easy to come in too high, but you definitely don't want to come in too low. Alright, so now I'm trimming. Alright, now we're basically on speed. I usually try to trim the Viper on speed almost level with the top of the E-bracket instead of the middle. Letting my glide slope come down a little bit more, and now I'm bringing a little bit of throttle in. There we go, we're getting our flight vector right on the runway. And you can see it's bouncing a lot more with the Viper, and that's mainly because the Viper is such a small, light little fighter, and its thruster is also extremely powerful. So it's a lot harder to maintain that perfect airspeed to be on speed. Alright, and there we go. We are on speed. I know the donut's not coming up each time, but we're right on the edge of where it will. And it's just because we're maintaining a little bit more speed. Once we get closer to the runway here, we'll be completely on speed like right now. And that's so I can go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of flare here near the end. I'm going to try to flatten out that glide slope a little bit more. Now I'm going to kill the throttle. Now I'm holding the nose up to aero brake as best I can. We've got the nose up still. We're slowing down. Now nose is going to come down all by itself. And you see we just rode that glide slope in like we did the Hornet, and then near the end this time I went ahead and flared a little bit more than I would with the Hornet, and that's just because, like I said, the Viper's got smaller gear. That's one of the characteristics of the Viper that's a little bit different. But getting here and getting set up was the exact same. No difference. Piece of cake. Let's move on to one more plane that you're all going to love. It's one of the easiest planes to land. A lot of people are intimidated by this plane because there is a lot to it. It's definitely very analog in a lot of it, but it is super easy to land. It is a Navy plane, so it does have robust gear, and we're just going to set it up on speed, and we're going to fly this thing right into the runway, and it's going to be nice and smooth, and it's going to be super easy. So let's jump into that next jet, and I will see you guys in the sky in just a moment. Alright everyone, here we are. We're in the same spot above Maycomp, right over here off our left shoulder like normal, but now we are in the F-14 Tomcat. This is the B model Tomcat. Beautiful, beautiful jet. So what we are going to do is we are going to make our left-hand turn. We're going to get lined up on the runway. We're going to drop our gear. We're going to get our flaps and slats out. And we are going to set this bird up to be on speed, just like we did the Hornet and the Viper. And then we're going to fly her right on into that runway and land. And it's going to be glorious. So here we go. Let's just pop the the pause off here. So we're doing 400 knots because it's a Tomcat and it goes really fast. So we're going to kill the throttle right now. Just like the Viper, we're going to bring our air brake out. Comes out the back here. See it open up just like that. And we're just going to leave that out now. That air brake's just going to stay out. And we're going to leave it out because it's easy to go fast in the Tomcat. It's easier to gain a little bit of speed than it is to try to slow down, just like the Viper. Also, we're a little high, and I did that on purpose because we're going to have to lose some altitude. And when you lose altitude, even if you're idle, you're going to gain speed, right? So I'm trying not to drop the nose too much. I don't want to get going too fast. We're almost down to 200 knots, so we're losing speed pretty good. We're also going to put our landing symbology on the HUD. It also has it in our screen.
Oh, I got dirt at 1 o'clock.
A little bit of a glare. Having a little bit of trouble getting down below 200, right? That's craziness. But we haven't got the gear out yet. So we're going pretty slow. We're going slow enough. We're going to bring the gear out. Oh, look at that. We went too far on our turn. We better get back over here. Don't worry. Don't panic. Not a big deal. There's our E bracket. It's a little bit smaller on the Tomcat, but it's the exact same thing. You can see our indexer is on and working. We're just going to work our way back into the runway. The gear is out now. We're going to bring the flaps and slats in. We're not panicking at all. We're just getting back lined up, working our way over there, letting the aircraft slow down all by itself. And dropping our altitude down at the same time. So a lot of people, when they're this far out of position, might be freaking out a little bit. Don't freak out. Stay calm. Don't get frantic. Don't start trying to fix everything really fast. Just let's get lined up. We're not losing too much speed. We're going a little slower than I'd want right now, so I'm giving it just a tad bit of throttle, but not too much. All right, look at that. We're all lined up. Everything's good. Now we're going to start trimming that nose up. Trimming the nose up, and this is going to make our airspeed come down more as we're trimming the nose up. So we want to try to maintain a little bit of airspeed while we're bringing the nose up. And that's because we're creating more resistance. That's what riding the glide slope is. You're creating resistance. You see our E brackets coming down, our velocity vectors coming down. We're close to on speed right now, right? Look at that. We're right there in the bracket. We're going to increase our throttle a little bit to get our vector back on the runway. A couple more dabs on the trim hat to get that nose up a little bit more to maintain that E bracket. Now we're just rocking that throttle.
500 feet.
Let's get rid of that HUD tape so we can see this.
400 feet.
And all I'm going to do, I'm still not
300.
pulling back or forward on the stick at all. What I'm going to do here is near the end, I'm going to
200.
increase our speed just a little bit. I'm not worried about on speed anymore.
100.
I'm just going to increase the throttle a little bit more. And all I'm doing is flattening it out just a little bit. Now I'm idle. I'm completely idle. I'm just going to let it sink into the runway on speed. Look at that. Smooth, right? That's a butter landing right there. And we were way out of position all the way up there till near the end. We were still able to get lined up, trim the nose up, start using the throttle to maintain our velocity. The E bracket came down real slow. We could have got worried about that. We could have killed the throttle completely. But that's a mistake. I looked down, the speed was down to like 130 knots. That's pretty slow. Gave it a little bit more throttle, and as we got the as the aircraft settled into on speed, the E-bracket started coming down to get into position. So we didn't panic. We flew the plane. Piece of cake, right? So there you go, everybody. That's on speed. Getting your gear out, your flaps down, trimming the nose into your E-bracket to have proper AOA angle, watching your indexer to watch your speed, and getting your velocity vector onto your landing point, and then lowering your speed or increasing your speed to move the velocity vector where you need it. If you're too high, let your velocity vector come down and lose a little extra altitude. Use your throttle to bring it back up once you've come down. There's no thing that says you're on perfect glide slope except your brain. So if you're really high, you need to know that you're really high. There we are. We are on the runway with a nice, clean, smooth landing. And the cool thing about the Tomcat is after you land, you get to sweep the wings back. Because it's just one of the coolest jets ever, right? It's also one of the biggest jets you're ever going to fly. I mean, this thing's massive. And when the wings are all spread out like that, it's a massive jet that is really easy to bump into shit. So the wings folding has multiple reasons. For one, you go a lot faster when you sweep the wings back when you're flying. That's how you cruise at high altitudes really fast, efficiently. And also when you're storing your aircraft on an aircraft carrier, having these gigantic wings out, you can't really do that. A lot of aircraft that are on aircraft carriers will have folding wings, bracketed folding wings, and in the Tomcat's situation, it has wings that sweep in and out. All right, everybody. I hope you learned a lot about landing, and I hope this helps you out a ton to kind of explain it so you grasp it better. Keep practicing. You don't have to land to practice on speed. Get out there and start just getting your aircraft set up for on speed. And fly around on speed a little bit. You'll get used to it. It'll help you out in the long run. Once you get used to being on speed, landing every aircraft is going to be easier. A lot of Russian aircraft don't have, E-brackets and all that stuff. But once you get the general idea of it, even landing those aircraft where you're doing it more by feel and knowledge is not that hard to do. In fact, in my beginners videos for Flaming Cliff's Russian aircraft, I kind of broke down in layman's terms easy ways to land those aircraft. So go back to that if you need help with aircraft that aren't modern American. I will see everybody in the next video.